I am so angry right now at this football club. So angry with what has gone on over the last 24 hours in regards to their Berriese deal. On obviously him now ending up at Arsenal, but we are going to push those aside. I did not want to make an entirely negative video today. I want to look forward and preview the Manchester City game on Saturday, because at the end of the day, life moves on. We don't have any control of the transfers. He's not going to be a Tottenham player. He's going to be an Arsenal player, and we've got a game to focus on Saturday. Now, I'm sure if you follow me on TikTok over the past 24 hours, you'll have seen all of the stuff that's been going on over there. A few videos that I made, let's say, jumping the gun a little bit early, thinking that he was going to come to Tottenham Hotspur, and now I've got egg on my face, and I've been dealing with that over the last 12 hours, and I've had to chin up and take it like a man, you know what I mean? So we're going to get on with our lives now. Man City on Saturday, a huge game for Tottenham Hotspur. The second game of our Premier League season, of course. The first real test, you'd say. I mean, Burnley at home was a very gentle, sort of ease your way into the season. Here's probably the worst team in the league at home. Get 3 points, get a bit of confidence going. You know, Richarlison, etc, Kudus, brilliant performances. But now we are playing one of the big boys, second game week. One of the best teams in the league. Probably the most convincing win against Wolves on the opening day of their season. So many threats that we have to deal with all over the pitch. So let's talk about that now, because I think it's going to be an incredibly interesting game. Tactically, the way that both teams set up, I think it's going to be a more classical City Spurs game in terms of under Conte, under Mourinho, some of the wins that you saw in that, Spurs sitting a little bit deeper compared to the ones we've seen with Ange Postecoglou over the past couple of years, where yes, we've still got results, but you know, trying to go a lot more toe-to-toe with Manchester City. So it's going to be hugely interesting. I'm going to tell you basically the lineup that I want to see, how I think that we can exploit City's weaknesses, how we can deal with obviously the plethora of attacking options and attacking threats that they have got. But if you are new here, just before we get into the video, subscribing would go a long way to making me feel better. It really would. That would be greatly appreciated. Liking the video as well, if you do enjoy it, would also be greatly appreciated. And yeah, let's just get straight into the video, because I can't bear to think about anything else Tottenham Hotspur related anymore. Let's just talk about the team we want to see on Saturday. Now, I think it goes without saying that we're going to see a back five. I think that you'll see a similar setup to how we set up against PSG in the Super Cup. You know, City are a similar style of team to Luis Enrique's PSG. You know, very fluid in those attacking areas. You know, love to sort of overload the midfield areas as well. Huge quality technically. A team that loves to, you know, dominate the ball, keep loads of possession. We know this. We've been watching Pep Guardiola's Man City for what, nearly a decade now in the Premier League, and we know exactly how they're going to play and exactly how they're going to set up. Pretty much, it's going to be Erling Haaland up top. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to play Omar Marmoush to sort of get an extra body into that box, to get an extra body up against those centre-halves, those three centre-halves that I think they expect and we all expect Tottenham Hotspur to play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a Haaland and a Marmoush playing pretty close together. I'd probably expect to see Bernardo Silva on the right-hand side, or Oscar Bob. He had a great game against Wolves last week. Jeremy Doku on the left-hand side, potentially. Tijani Reinders, I'm sure, will be starting, making those late runs into the box, driving forward with the ball. Nico Gonzalez as well, you would imagine, starts next to him. And that's an area where I think we need to exploit. Them not having Rodri. Rodri wasn't in the squad against Wolves. I'm almost 100% sure. He definitely didn't play, I don't think. So, and they said he's out till after the international break. So, you know, Rodri not being there is obviously massive for the programme. That's something that we are going to have to exploit, because despite the fact Nico Gonzalez was good against Wolves, you still saw in that Wolves game, especially in the first half, there were chances for Wolves on the transition. That midfield area I thought looked slightly weaker, defending transitions, Wolves on the break, and obviously Spurs have a lot more quality than Wolves on the break, and you would hope that we can hurt them regularly throughout the match. You would hope that they are constantly thinking about sort of the threat going the other way, as well as just sort of having 65-70% of the ball and dominating the game, playing in and around our penalty area. I don't think we'll be sat incredibly deep. But like I said, I think that we'll want to spring on them and we'll want to really utilise those opportunities that we get. I think you'll probably see Rico Lewis starting at right back, which again is that something that we can exploit. Maybe Mateus Nunes he goes with, just for a little bit more physicality in that right back role, bit more sort of up and down. You're going to see likely John Stones and Josko Gvardiol, similar to how it was last weekend. I don't think Ruben Diaz is quite fit yet, so it will likely be those two. There's transfer rumours about Akanji as well, and then Renan Nouri at left back as well. I mean, maybe they go Gvardiol at left back and maybe Ake if he's fit, Diaz if he's back fit, Akanji if they want to play him, you know, amongst all the transfer rumours. Maybe they go with that to be a little bit more solid defensively, but I think those are the 3 areas that I'll be looking at on the pitch to really go at in this Manchester City team. You've got Brennan Johnson, who will be my choice on the left-hand side, up against Rico Lewis. You've got Mohamed Kudus up against Ait Nouri, who's going to want to get forward. He's going to want to tuck inside the pitch. There is going to be space on this right-hand side for a Mohamed Kudus to exploit. And then their midfield as well, of Nico Gonzalez and Tijani Reinders, likely playing a 2-man midfield in there. I think that those are the 3 key areas that we should be looking to exploit. And this is the team that I'll go with to try and exploit them. Obviously, Van de Ven, Vicario, Romero and Kevin Danso would be the locks. Like I said earlier, I would go with a back 5. I think that it suits us having an extra centre-half in there to sort of crowd the box to help deal with the threat of Erling Haaland, players making late runs. It worked so well against PSG, sort of packing out the box defending. Those 3 work so together as centre-halves. It allows Jed Spence and Pedro Porro to probably have a little bit more freedom to go up the pitch when we are attacking and support those attacks. And I actually think Pedro Porro and Jed Spence are 2 of our biggest attacking weapons. So that's something that I think a back 5 really gives us against a team like City and allows them to do. Whereas if we are playing the back 4, they'll obviously have a lot more defensive responsibilities, and where we still don't have that number 10, it feels pretty pointless for me playing a... I've just realised I've got 12 players on the pitch. That's quality. I literally just realised that I've got 12 players on the pitch. Let me just take Bentancur out of there. This shows how I'm just not a tactico, lads, right? There you go, right. That's better. Now we've actually got a full 11 players on the pitch. You were probably thinking, oh, it's going to be quite easy for us with 12 players on the pitch. But no, there you go. So Porro and Spence, like I said, that stays the same. Take out that midfielder in there because we just don't have a number 10 to be playing in there. So it almost feels a little bit pointless for me to go with 3 midfielders. I mean, you know, maybe packing out the midfield would be better. But, you know, you can have Romero step up into this area. I just like the back 3 against City because obviously we will be sitting deeper. I think the box defending is important. They'll be looking to get a lot of crosses in from out wide as well. Jed Spence and Pedro Porro, when City are attacking, will obviously drop deeper. We can deal with that sort of 4-man attack, those threats, a lot better. You can have Jed Spence 1v1 over here against Oscar Bob, Van de Ven potentially pushing into the wide channels, but also trusting Jed Spence, trusting Pedro Porro 1v1 and making sure that we don't have any spaces in the box for Erling Haaland to thrive in, for Reinders, etc., to make those runs into the box, for the winger on the other side, etc., etc. And I'd play Sarr and Paulinho as my 2 midfielders in there. Paulinho, obviously the breaker, the destroyer of play, you know, hugely important to that defensive side of the game, you know, can be on to Tijani Reinders. You saw the job that he did on Desiree Doué in the PSG Champions League game. Almost a man-marking job at times. Paulinho was just following Desiree Doué. And I expect that whoever plays in this 10, whether it's Omar Marmoush or... is Phil Foden fit? I don't think Phil Foden's fit. Ryan Cherky, whoever plays in there, you'd imagine Paulinho would have a very, very important job in terms of stopping them, receiving the ball in these pockets, turning and creating. And also, you know, stepping up onto Tijani Reinders as well, stopping him driving with the ball. Pape Sarr as well on the other side. I think Pape Sarr is a shoo-in. He is 100% going to start the game, which unfortunately means that Bentancur and Bergvall will likely be on the bench, but 2 unbelievable options to have on the bench if we either need to change things up or freshen things up. And I originally had a 3-man midfield in there anyway, so maybe Thomas Frank just tries to break the rules on Saturday and play 12 men. That'd be pretty funny, wouldn't it? Probably maybe need it, but... yeah, so that 2-man midfield in there, I think that's very solid from a defensive point of view. You've also got Pape Sarr who can carry the ball out on the transition. Jed Spence who can carry the ball out on the transition. Pedro Porro can get his head up, and make those passes, whether that's over the top to Mohamed Kudus, fire those balls in between the lines to get Kudus turning and playing in these areas. And then the front 3, I'll go with Johnson on the left. I think the best example of how I can envision Johnson playing in this game is a little bit similar to how he scored his goal against Burnley, making these runs in between the fullback and the centre half, exploiting that space that City leave in behind. You've got players like Jed Spence, Pape Sarr driving with the ball up in these areas, hopefully being able to find these passes. He'll be running in behind Dominic Solanke for either flick-ons or if Solanke holds the ball up and can play that pass through to him. And that's why I think Solanke's hugely important in a game like this too. Look, Richarlison demonstrated some really, really good hold-up play against Burnley and in the Super Cup against PSG, and I would not be upset at all with him playing in there. But I still also think it's one of those things where you have to be a little bit careful with Richarlison's minutes, and I think that Solanke's game hugely suits playing against a City, etc. People have forgotten, I think, a little bit because of how good Richarlison's been the last week or so. the incredible qualities that Dominic Solanke can give us against a team like this in terms of holding the ball up, making that ball stick, that athleticism that he's got, running in behind too, obviously the goal threat with him as well. And Mohamed Kudus is a shoo-in to start on that right-hand side. And I think, Mohamed Kudus drifting inside the pitch, picking up the ball in and around these areas, driving at that back four. You've got Brennan Johnson making those runs. Pap Sarr will be up in these areas too when we're on the ball and we're in attack, because of the engine that he's got. He's so able to get up and down the pitch so effectively. Dominic Solanke as well. Hopefully, when he's not holding the ball up, when he's not trying to sort of push his back into centre halves and bring other players into play, playing on the last line of that defence, trying to make those little runs in behind. I remember that beautiful chip that he scored, was it against Villa or West Ham in our 4-1 home win last year? That exact type of goal is what I want to see more from Dominic Solanke this season, running off that last shoulder. And, he does have good finishing ability, especially when he's through one-on-one. He does it. I back him to score in those situations. I think Mohamed Kudus, Pap Sarr carrying the ball, Johnson and Solanke will be those threats, hopefully, for us running in behind. The threat that we're missing with somebody like a Heung-min Son no longer being at the football club. That's incredibly important to replace, and we've seen over the years how effective that kind of player is against Manchester City, which is why I go with a Brennan Johnson over a Wilson Odobert or a Matisse Tell or a Richarlison on that left-hand side. I just think there's a little bit more in behind. There's a little bit more goal threat, and I think that suits us in terms of the balance of this side. I think there's, there are certain changes you can make here. Richarlison in for Solanke. If Solanke's not quite fit enough, would absolutely be a sort of change that I could see happening. I don't think that changes much for us, to be honest. I think they'd be asked pretty similar things against this City side. Odobert potentially, Bergvall potentially. I could see Bentancur maybe starting over. I can't see Pap Sarr not playing in this game, to be completely honest with you. I couldn't see that happening. I think that engine, those legs are so important in a game like this, and the form that he's in as well feels fairly undroppable especially against a side with the quality of Manchester City. And aside from that, maybe if a doggy's fully fit, we play a doggy on that left-hand side and give Spence a little rest. But again, I think Spence is in such good form at the moment. Pedro Porro will just really look to ease Destiny Doggy back in, and hasn't had a minute since coming back from his injury. So I expect he'll be on the bench too. And aside from that, I think that will be the starting 11. I think that gives us... I think that 100% gives us a good chance of, at the very least, hurting Manchester City and creating opportunities for ourselves. It's definitely not going to be one of those games where, City just completely dominate and we look hopeless. We're definitely going to have that threat on the transition. I think Wolves showed that last week, despite the fact they lost 4-0. I think they showed that, there are vulnerabilities in this Manchester City team. And I think that if we can make the ball stick with Richarlison or Solanke, whoever plays in that area there, have Johnson and Kudus sort of in and around them to play off them, whether that's running in behind or dropping into these areas to pick up the ball. Brennan Johnson, I literally want Brennan Johnson hanging off the last man and making those runs and beyond. He doesn't need to be involved in build-up. Spence and Sarr on this side are more than capable enough of carrying the ball. Mickey van der Ven can carry the ball forward as well from that left centre-half role, and I think the back five gives us cover. I think it gives us security. I think it gives us an excellent shape defensively when City have got the ball, pushing higher up. It gives us a really, really solid foundation in there with that back five. And the athletes that there are in this starting 11 to sort of spring that trap and turn defence into attack very quickly, I think that that's a major positive for us. Because defensively, it's going to look something like this when City have got the ball. It's going to look like Spence and Porro being 1v1 with their wingers, Van der Ven, Romero and Danso hopefully being tightly knitted in this penalty area, not allowing Haaland the space to sort of dominate and have those crosses floated into him like he likes to have. And hopefully, they'll all have good games and we'll be able to shut out City, maybe even keep a clean sheet. Who knows? Probably not. But I'm quite confident that this team is set up really nicely to get a result against Man City. I really do believe that we can get a result. It's a good time to play them 2 game weeks in. I like the balance of that side. I like the qualities of that side. Yes, we are definitely still missing that number 10. Yes, a ball-carrying number 10 would be unbelievable on a day like this, but like I discussed at the start of the video, Morgan White fell through. Eberezer has now fallen through, so we're left in a position where we don't really have that 10 apart from Kudus. But I don't think you'd play a midfield 3 and a back 4 just to fit Kudus in the 10 to then play another wide player. I think this is the way to go about it. I think this is the way that Thomas Frank will go about it. If I had to give a prediction, I'd go with a 2-2 draw. I think that we'll draw the game 2-2. I think that both teams will have good opportunities. I think our defence will cancel out their attack in a lot of ways. I think that we'll be able to exploit them, but they're also, you know, the quality they've got in those forward areas, it's one moment with them. It's, you know, you blink and you'll miss it with some of those players. I think Ryan Cherky will have a big involvement in this game. I think him picking up these little pockets in these areas, Paulinho and Sarr are going to have to be so top to stop him turning, finding those little passes. It takes a split second for players of that quality, and it'll be really, really interesting to see who he goes with. I'm going to be really interested to see who he goes with in that 10, whether it is Omar Marmoush, whether it's Ryan Cherky, whether Phil Foden's back, whether Tijani Reinders pushes up into there and they play maybe a more defensive setup in midfield. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. But that is the team that I would go with. That's how I think you beat Manchester City on Saturday, or give yourselves the best chance of beating Manchester City on Saturday. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think the score is going to be. Let me know if you disagree with anything I've said in this video, what players you think are going to be hugely important in this game, whether you'd have anyone off the bench that would come in and start in that team. I think the subs later in the game, I think Bergvall for that energy in midfield, that ball carrying. If we're losing the game, I think Bergvall will be looked at to change the game. Obviously, Tell, Odebear, Richarlison can be difference makers in those forward areas. Archie Gray's energy is something that Thomas Frank loves off the bench, definitely, and he was great, and he really grew into that game against Burnley, so he'd definitely be with a shout of at least getting some sort of minutes. Destiny Doggy, if he's fit, I'm sure will come on at some point. And yeah, that's how I think we do it. Let me know, like I said, about what you think about the game. Score predictions in the comments. Like and subscribe if you're new here. I'll be coming out obviously after the game with a post-match reaction. Hopefully it's 6 points from 6 and we started the season well. We can put a little bit of the negativity of all the transfer stuff this week behind us, get back into our rhythm. Hopefully we start to move again in the transfer market. 10 days left to save our summer. Still need big players in big positions. That number 10, maybe another defender as well, who knows. But yeah, adios, see you in the next one.